Here we go. We are in the second webinar of a series of webinars for Creativity is the Future. Tonight's topic is, does creativity matter in the world of work? So the audience for this webinar series ideally would be school administrators, teacher leaders, and trainers. Although everyone is welcome and there is much to be gained from these presentations and the share out of information. The topics cover a broad range, and it's really to focus on the nature of creativity, its importance, and how we can really bring that up in education and really make creativity a cornerstone of the educational practices in our classrooms and in our daily edu-spheres. Some of the upcoming topics: in November, we have bringing innovation to school. And then in December, we've got one on storytelling. Who's telling your story? January brings in the teaching for creativity in the Common Core classroom. February 18th, we see how do you do it? Insights from school admin on bringing creativity to the school forefront. March wraps it up with Ignite Talks. What does creativity in education look like to you? That's more of a roundtable discussion with a bunch of great educators. April 22nd, using digital storytelling as an instructional strategy. And then we round out in May, the future of digital learning. With us today, we have Tacey Trowbridge. And Tacey leads Adobe's Worldwide Education Program Group. Her team engages and inspires educators and students to become creators and not just consumers of digital media. Tacey's group provides free curriculum and professional development and hosts the largest online community of creative educators, the Adobe Education Exchange. Huge point of pride, right, Tacey?
Absolutely. That's right.
Prior to joining Adobe, Tacey led national programs and organizations with a focus on teaching and learning. She has worked for the University of California, Teachscape, Stanford University, and San Francisco area schools. She earned her BA from Wesleyan University in Connecticut and her MA from Stanford School of Education in Learning, Design, and Technology.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm so glad everyone's here today, and also that you're being active in the chat pod. I hope that you will continue to share ideas, ask questions, react to things that you hear. Part of what makes these webinars really exciting is an opportunity to hear from folks, in this case from all over the world, and to have you share some of your experiences about how you're preparing students for the future. So I'm excited today to share some of the research that we've done recently. I think there's some great tidbits in here, some helpful information, and look forward to your thoughts and reactions to it as well. So I wanted to start with a little context. So this is a picture from the Pope's inauguration in 2005. And part of what this does is help reflect some of the changes in the ways in which we communicate and the context for the work that we're doing. So in 2005, Facebook was only available by invitation to high school students and to college students. YouTube was in beta, and the first iPhone wasn't going to come out for another 2 years. And if we fast forward to 2013, the Pope Francis's inauguration, you'll see a dramatic difference in the audience. At this point, Facebook had 1.2 billion users. YouTube, 6 billion hours were watched a month. And there are 1.4 billion smartphones. The world has changed really dramatically. The world that our students are going into, the way in which we communicate, what community means. These are all things that are really important for us to consider as educators as we look to prepare students for the world of work and for a future. Also, the world of work is changing really rapidly. 65% of today's school kids are going to end up in jobs that haven't been invented yet, and that's according to the US Department of Labor. And so it's really critical that we prepare students to learn how to think, to learn how to learn, to be innovators, to be creators. They're going to be part of creating that future for us. And so it's incumbent upon us to make sure that they are well prepared for that. Then Adobe believes that creativity is critical, and we see that in our own work, in the kinds of employees that we're hiring, in the way in which we position our business, but we also see it with our customers, whether it's education customers, whether it's corporations, but we see real benefits for companies and organizations that are creative and that encourage creativity. We've conducted 3 studies over the last 3 years in order to dive a little bit more deeply into this and understand more about the phenomenon of creativity in the classroom, Last year we focused on what were the barriers for teaching creativity, and this year we looked at industry and talked to hiring managers to understand what are the skills that they're looking for in the next generation. And so that's the study that I'm going to share with you today. All of the studies are available online and have some great information in them. So this was called Seeking Creative Candidates, Hiring for the Future. We commissioned a firm, Edelman, to do the research for us. They interviewed more than 1,000 hiring managers in the U.S. over the summer and have pulled together the data and help give us a sense of what they're seeing and what hiring managers are interested in and are saying about the world of work today. So not surprisingly, they see creativity as really essential to economic growth. More than 3/4 of them, 85%, believe that creativity is valuable to society. And then we dug a little bit deeper and we asked them to tell us a little bit more about the specific skills that they're looking for. 5-to-1, they preferred creative skills over conventional skills. 95% agreed that creativity is key when evaluating a candidate for a job. And 82% of hiring managers seek well-rounded candidates who can apply creativity and core skills to a range of business and technical problems. And that last point came up again and again throughout the study, that it became clear that hiring managers don't just want deep technical knowledge or particular knowledge, they want to hire employees who can work with the team, who can lead, who can solve problems that they've never solved before, who can apply their knowledge to new situations. I heard that most recently in New Mexico when talking with folks who were working to support the labs in New Mexico, that they described the technical candidates they hire as great for the job that they're hired to do. But they can't necessarily work effectively across teams. They don't tend to get promoted. They don't tend to move into positions of leadership. And so the idea of including creativity beyond just deep technical skills or including knowledge and experiences beyond a particular subject matter is something that we certainly hear in the field as well as see come up in this study. So one of the other things that really struck me is to see what are the skills that have the most value in driving salary increases, and it's problem solving, it's creativity. These are things that some schools do a fantastic job of teaching, but in our current climate where we look at test results, we look at seat time, we look at completion of a set of tasks that may not require a whole lot of problem solving and creativity, it raises a question. Are students really prepared for the workforce of tomorrow where what's rewarded is problem solving and creativity? So we also asked them what are the skills that they're looking for? What do they really want to see from new hires? 88% want students to be tech savvy. And part of that is also about being able to learn. So you know existing technologies, but the technologies we'll be using in 5 years will be really different from what we're using today. So being able to adapt, to learn new skills, to apply what you know is really critical in terms of being tech savvy. Also being able to communicate through digital and visual media. Like if we want students to share their ideas, to make an impact, to solve some of the really challenging problems we're facing, they need to be able to communicate about them in ways that we can all hear, in ways that reach a broad audience. And today that's digital and that's social and it's visual. And then 76% wanted to hire for students who could express creativity. I think one of the other things that struck me about this study, and this is somewhat intuitive, is that employers are looking for evidence of these skills. They're no longer just looking at a resume. They are also looking on social media. They're looking on LinkedIn. They want to see what a candidate has done and what their presence is online. And I think that raises some additional questions as well. So then when asked, are students ready for today's dynamic workforce? 7 in 10 said no. And this again raises some interesting questions. So what does it mean to prepare students for the future? I think we were chatting a little bit before this webinar started about the purpose of education, that preparing students for work is one purpose. It's not the only one, but it's an important one. And I think increasingly in challenging economies, we want to make sure that all of our students have the best opportunities that they can to be successful, to have a fulfilling and interesting career. So I think this raises some interesting questions for us in terms of how we're going to prepare students. And so I want to take some time today to look also at best practices. What are people doing that does help prepare students for this changing world of work, that prepares them with the kinds of skills that will ultimately help them be successful? So just to summarize some of the themes, and there's an infographic around this, which most of these slides are taken from. That's published on our website. So certainly something, I think there's already a link to that from the chat pod. So if you want to explore this more, great. We'll also be producing and releasing a video this week that includes many of the same information. So would love for you to share it and to hear your reactions to it as well. So I think the key findings that we took away from this is that technology is really changing the marketplace and what's required for success. That also means that the way in which candidates are being evaluated is changing. Creativity, problem solving came up as really the key components for preparing candidates for a new market, and that candidates with these skills are rewarded financially and they're more valued. And then that we're in a position where the current candidates, the current students that are coming out of schools, aren't seen as well prepared by the hiring managers. So we've got a real challenge to address there. And I think that's, again, not the only purpose of education, but an important one for us to think about and to figure out how can we better prepare students so that hiring managers are excited to hire some of the amazing new talent that we hope we're preparing for the workforce. And then I think there's an opportunity for us that came out of this around broadening skill sets, making sure that students have a broad education and not just a deep education, and that they have opportunities to solve problems and ways of closing this gap between what hiring managers are seeing and what they need to see in the workforce. So I wanted to also mention another study that Adobe's done and released around the same period of time. So we see that creative candidates are preferred. What does creativity mean for businesses? Is it something that they value? And so I'll share a little bit more about this study. We'll send you some links, but I wanted to make sure that you saw these results as well. So 82% of companies do see that there's a strong connection between creativity and business results. And that's certainly something that Adobe sees as we work with customers and look at the customers that are particularly successful, that are really growing and moving into new markets. They would describe themselves as creative, and they need employees who are creative as well. And we dug a little bit deeper. Companies that foster creativity actually see 10% or more revenue growth than their peers by 3.5 to 1. Those companies that are ranked highly for fostering creativity also are ranked highly as being great places to work. So I think there's real value for companies to explore creativity and develop and apologize that. So I want to take a moment to just explore what this looks like, and we'll look at a couple of different examples, but I wanted to share a video with you from a classroom in San Francisco that is working to address some of these challenges.
My name is Jeff Larson, and I teach art and animation at Balboa High School in San Francisco, California. I feel creativity is really important for students because it gives them an outlet for expressing their ideas, putting a personal touch on their understanding of concepts. It gives them a way to think about things and revisit and explore things as they create something to, communicate an idea to somebody. The creative process can kind of be a messy one. I try to step back as they are beginning the process of making things and give them space to kind of bounce around and start creating pieces. I believe it's important for students to become creators of content and media because it reverses the roles and the position that they're in. And instead of passively receiving information, they have to actively engage and think about the whole process in creation and delivery and learn skills and communicate with others and work together to produce things. And it gives them an opportunity to work with new methods and software. Our school went from being one of the lowest performing schools in the district to now one of the most requested schools. And I think it's because of having opportunities like this to work with tools, to meet people and professionals who are involved in digital media and technology has really opened their eyes to possibilities and given them experiences that they wouldn't have otherwise had.
Thank you, great. And I started to just explore the chat pod a little bit for questions, and we'll get back to those certainly. But I hope what this example showed you is some of the importance of what creativity can look like, the way it allows students to dive deeper really understand the concepts that they're being taught, and prepares them for the future. Balboa High School has been recognized within the state of California as one of the top schools in terms of preparing students for success. It's a model program. We're really excited that to see the work that Jeff is doing and the kind of impact on his students as well. We also work with another one of the high schools that is part of this program in California, in the Coachella Valley. They've done really interesting work around providing internships for students, ensuring that they have professional content, and begin to build that bridge between the kinds of work that students are doing in the classroom and what students can get hired for, what industries looking for and interested in. So I think there's some really great models in career and technical education around preparing students effectively for the future. I'm going to show you one more video here, and this one is comes to us through the University of Oregon School of Journalism. They've been partnering with a local high school to teach journalism, to help students find a voice, to be able to look at the world around them, communicate it effectively. There's a lot of information on this particular high school, Roosevelt High School, but this will just give you a taste of a little bit of the high school and some of the things that they want to accomplish by teaching this journalism class.
St. John's is a very tight-knit community. Everyone knows everyone. It's definitely grown in the last few years and become more diverse, but it's kind of like its own little mini city, so to speak. There's this downtown area not too far away from the school, a lot of local shops, businesses, and that just kind of promotes this idea of close-knit community. You know, the students on one hand have that, but then we also are in a kind of low-income neighborhood that does have in some pockets, a higher crime rate. So it's, you know, there's definitely some challenges also of living in this neighborhood, and I think students are never far removed from that.
As of right now, my sisters are in foster care. I don't know if they actually remember me or if they know who I am or such, but I kind of like go by this thing. I want to be a brother they'd be proud of, so that's where part of the majority of my motivation comes from.
When I was really little, people always told me I couldn't do things. It was always, you can't draw, you can't write, you can't do math. People tried to push me against the wall and tell me what I couldn't do, and they never held me up on like, wow, good job.
Also, I want to be successful for my family here as well, because we weren't always in the best of situations financially, and I want to be able to support them.
In a school that is highly minority populated or somewhat marginalized, it's really important for those folks to feel like they're a part of the community, that they're really part of the democracy, that they have a stake in this whole concept. If they're United States citizens, they should feel like they have their feet solely planted in the soil and the ground, and that their concerns are important, and that their concerns should be listened to and should be duly noted.
At Roosevelt, we've tried so many different ways from the staff side to reach out to kids, to instruct and reteach when it comes to a student failing the test, to provide testing support and a good testing environment. You know, we've tried all these different things to make testing successful, and what ultimately it comes down to is that students aren't coming to us prepared to meet these tests. Students aren't coming to us with the skills needed, and therefore there's a big gap there. So where, you know, the expectation of testing is where the reality of our students are is sometimes mismatched, and that can be very frustrating for both staff and students.
People are empowered by voice. We realize who we are as an individual, as a democratic citizen, as someone who has something to say. That's what our nation is based on, and that's what it's founded upon, and that's what compulsory education is supposed to do. It's supposed to take students and teach them how to be better citizens.
With journalism, you know, the reading, the writing, the thinking, and the public speaking, being able to interview, being able to speak to someone who you don't know, those are all great tools that I feel enables a student to feel confident about going beyond high school. Where in another case, if they're just looking at their regular core, classes, they might not get that, and therefore maybe feel a little less prepared to deal with the rigors of college.
Great, and I wanted to show this video in part just to share the importance of developing these kinds of skills with a broad audience, that these are things that all students need to know in order to be successful. They need to have practice, to have opportunities. I think one of the things that's, well, as I travel around both the world and the US, I get to visit schools. And I think sometimes we walk into schools that are amazing. They have incredible resources. They're doing really wonderful things. Examples like that journalism program are fantastic. I visited a middle school recently that was really doing very interesting work with gaming and helping students create games to teach STEM topics. So they were learning about how to create games. They were also teaching content that was important, doing just incredible work. I then visited a school that had far fewer resources, and they were very proud to show me the latest technology that they'd acquired for their school. So we walked into the library, and it was the largest television I'd ever seen. And that's discouraging to me. I think about what the students are learning in those two situations. One where they're getting to create games, they're diving deep into content, they're trying to explain it to someone else, and another where students are watching. And I hope they're watching wonderful television. That would be a good thing. But I think the long-term results for those students are likely to be very different if they don't have opportunities to create in ways that are compelling and important. So one of the things that we've been trying to do at Adobe is to increase the opportunities for students, particularly in Title I schools, by providing free software, a free lab set of incredible tools to help students be creators and not just consumers of digital content. There are 9 other companies that are participating in the ConnectEd program, but it's a way to try to take some of these ideas and make them accessible to students in all schools across the country. I think challenging, there's lots of interesting work to be done around that, but it's certainly an attempt on our part to try to put into practice some of the things that we believe, some of the best practices that we see around the country, and to share those more broadly. You'll find lots of information about resources, ideas for lesson plans, models for the kinds of things that you can do within your schools on the Education Exchange, as well as an incredible community of educators that are engaged in doing this work. I wanted to also share what one community college is doing in Washington. Lake Washington Community College teaches students to present their work to industry panelists. They also work in cross-disciplinary teams, and they work on real-world projects. And I think those 3 components are really important in terms of helping students understand the kinds of things that are expected of them in the workforce and giving them the skills that they really will need. They've seen great success in terms of employment rates. And what employers report back is they hire their students because they have these kinds of experiences, because they can work in a team, they do have the creative and technical skills, and they also know something about the design process and can articulate that. So really proud of the work that they've done. An internship, certainly an important component that I see included in lots of different schools. Southwestern University did an interesting study looking at students who completed internships being much more likely to find full-time work and then to be more satisfied in the work. The other thing that came out of the study was that it was cumulative. So if you did more than one internship, you learned more, and you actually were even more likely to find a job and more likely to be satisfied. And so that ongoing experience of what work looks like and trying to identify where are the places that really make sense for students to focus their efforts is something that pays off as well. Then I was excited to see this Harvard class that teaches doctors in a different way. They ask doctors to go to a museum and to observe paintings. The goal is to teach them to see, to teach them to improve their observation. They did this as a controlled study, so they looked at the students who'd taken the class and then medical students who hadn't taken the class. And the accuracy of their clinical observations increased by 38%. We're 38% higher than compared with the control group. Which I just think that sometimes we've got to think about things differently, that when we teach people to see, it is not only focusing on the medical pieces, but it's giving them the kinds of observational skills that they can apply. This speaks to the point that came up earlier in the study about not only having deep technical skills, but also having some broad skills, and those being really applicable. Then, let's see, finally, I also wanted to mention the importance of branding for students. Some of the things that we've seen that are successful are different ways in which students are communicating their own skills. But students are increasingly, well, I think about when I started work, which was probably longer ago than I'd care to admit, there was still an expectation that you would stick to a career. You might change jobs, but you would stick within a general field. For students today, they expect to change jobs multiple times. They even expect to change careers multiple times. So that the way in which they need to take ownership of their career and their future direction is really different. No one is going to do that for them. And so understanding that you are responsible for your own development, your own growth, and have the kinds of tools and skills that you need to do that is increasingly important. I think also we have new ways to represent who we are and share our knowledge and skills with employers, with the rest of the world, so that folks see and understand what we can do. And there are a broader range of ways to do that now. And students who aren't prepared to communicate digitally and visually, I think, are missing an opportunity to present themselves well to employers and also for their work life, which may not just consist of working for someone else. They may also be working for themselves. So we see an explosion of visual resumes. And I think that's a really, if you do a Google search for visual resume, you will see all sorts of examples of how students are presenting themselves almost as infographics. They're sharing information in a way that's easy to scan, that's digestible, that's compelling. For many of these students, their pop culture is visual, their pop culture is digital, and so it makes sense to them to use some of these tools. But I think that there are important lessons for us to think about when we're teaching students how to communicate in a world that is changing so rapidly. So I'd like to show you an example of a video resume that a student from Full Sail University put together.
Hi, my name's Krista Timmerman, and this is my story. I'm a Jersey girl, born and raised by the shore. Growing up, I was a classically trained singer. When I was older, I loved the flashy New York life and the gritty rock scene of Asbury Park. After some street team activities for a local band, I began to see the big picture, and I knew I wanted to work in the entertainment industry. In 2010, after graduating from Howell High School, I moved to Orlando, Florida to begin my degree at Full Sail University. At school, I studied entertainment business with my own personal focuses on branding and new media. I'm self-motivated and always eager to learn. Outside of the classroom, I garnered a real-world education, playing intern for an advertising association, audio branding companies, and even an a cappella group. I learned a wide range of talents too: how to give awesome presentations, how to sell computers in South America, event planning, beatboxing, even how to gain Instagram followers. I work well in Excel and numbers, but I'm a big fan of Photoshop and Keynote. I get a sense of satisfaction after completing a task well. Whether it's completing a social impression consultation or making a mean cappuccino, I always love to work, and I'm eager to please. I always stay up to date with industry trends and news. Hire me, and I'll quench your thirst for something to talk about other than the weather and the Yankees. Simply, hire me because this is my passion. I'm professional, ready to take on any challenge that comes my way with a smile and personality as bright as a stage light. You can contact me through my social media, whoops, that's my Facebook, email, or about.me/Krista Timmerman. Thanks for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.
I think she's done a fantastic job of really sharing who she is, giving you her knowledge, her skills, as well as her personality and the kinds of things that she'd be great at. That's compelling. I think one of the things that I was also noticing as I look at the ways in which folks are using video, Goucher College just announced that video is a part of their application process. They're no longer looking at test scores. They ask students to submit work that's been graded in the classroom and to submit a brief video or a narrated slideshow that tells who they are and what they're passionate about. Tufts University has also been accepting videos as part of their application process, but I think we're seeing an increasing interest and focus on the ways in which students can communicate visually, can communicate through video, can really share and communicate who they are. So I don't think that the resume is going away or that college applications are going to change tomorrow, but I think for students who take advantage of these tools and the kind of medium that exists out there, they have an opportunity to stand out and to really demonstrate who they are to an audience that's interested and that is increasingly used to seeing professional video, seeing images. So if students can use some of those skills as part of the way in which they're communicating who they are and what's important about them, that's going to be incredibly valuable and important. So there are many more examples of great work that folks are doing. I would love for you to share some of the things that you're seeing, best practices, if there's anything that you think this audience would be interested in terms of how you're preparing students for the future or what that looks like. Definitely share it in the chat pod. I'm going to take a few minutes to also talk to you about what Adobe's doing to support this kind of change. And so some of what we've done is around we want to make sure that students can really demonstrate skill and knowledge. We've run a traditional certification program, we'll have more than 400,000 students who have earned a certificate at the end of this year, which is really exciting, just huge numbers. These are students from around the world. We've also done some research around this, most recently in 2012, looked at the state of Florida and the programs that were using these certification programs and saw measures that were really meaningful. A decrease in absenteeism and a substantial increase in graduation rates when compared to similar peers at similar schools, and then an increase in job placement. So certainly that's been a helpful model for us to use. Happy to continue to do that work. But I think long term, we're also looking at how do we make it easy for students to demonstrate skill and knowledge in a world that's changing so rapidly. So we're looking at portfolio and the ways in which we can support and help students as they are presenting who they are by gathering together examples of their work. Certainly true for educators as well, to be able to demonstrate the kinds of things they're doing in the classroom. We're also looking at badging and micro-credentialing as a way to help students demonstrate the relationship between skills. For example, with a certification exam, you may dive deep into web design, and that's an area of expertise, fantastic. But I think if we look at the way students do web design, they may also be including some video or some animation, and they may need to know how to work with images as well. So being able to show how these skills knit together and how they're interrelated, and also to show what's the next step. So if a student completes a micro-credential in a particular area, to have a sense if they're digital, they're interconnected. And so you can see, oh, how could I pursue that further? Where are ways in which I could learn more about this topic that's of particular interest to me? We're looking at it for teacher professional development as well. So I think that's an area of focus for us in the coming year. We're really excited about the possibilities, and all to achieve the bigger goal of helping students demonstrate who they are and what they can do and what they know. Then we also have this platform that Kelly mentioned earlier, which we are indeed very proud of and excited about, and this is the Adobe Education Exchange. It is a place where more than 150,000 educators come together to seek inspiration, to share ideas, to learn from each other, to take free professional development. This webinar series will be posted on the Education Exchange, but it's a fantastic place to go for additional information to dive deeper. Some of the folks who are really active and great participants on the Education Exchange are also part of Adobe learning communities. So there's some fantastic experts on the site, and I think you have a chance to really get a window into their practice, to see the kinds of things that they're doing, to ask them questions. It's a phenomenal resource. I think as we started the Education Exchange, it was really a repository, a place to publish information. And probably not surprisingly, we've seen that the social components of it are incredibly important. People want to see what educators want to know, what are other educators like me doing? What are the kinds of things they're teaching in the classroom? How are they doing it? How is it being funded? So I think this is a great place, and it's been a great change for us to try to make it an increasingly social platform that connects not just people with resources, but people with each other. And so expect to see more of that over the years to come with the Education Exchange. It's an evolving platform, and it's been really exciting to see its tremendous growth over the last 3 years. So that takes me to the end, and I wanted to close out by sharing with you a statement of our beliefs about creativity and its importance. This is a high-level anthem for us, and I think one of the things that we see is that certainly creativity is really important, but we want to give students the kinds of tools so that they can express that creativity. You probably would have a different anthem, but I'd be really interested to hear what are the things that you deeply believe and see as important around this topic.
Today, it's not about what you know.
It's about what you make,
what you invent,
what you design, what you build.
It's about ideas.
it's about creativity.
We need new ideas.
We need to work together.
And it's gonna be a challenge.
Creativity is about storytelling,
and expression,
and passion,
and heart.
Now creativity is digital.
There are entire generations that have grown up in a digital world.
Creativity is more important than ever, but the tools have changed.
Students
and teachers
are doing amazing things
in science,
in business,
in medicine,
in education, and in things we haven't even thought of yet.
Digital expression is the new literacy,
and creativity is the new fluency.
Learn the tools.
Learn the tools.
Learn the tools.
Because creativity isn't an elective anymore. It's our future.
So Adobe sits in a really interesting position around this work in that we are connected to industry, we're connected to education. We want to use our broad platform to try to ensure that we can get a message out around the importance of creativity. We want to encourage and support the practices around creativity, but this isn't work that we by any stretch imagine to do alone. And so we look for partnerships with great organizations, for educators who are doing really wonderful work to try to support that. And I invite you to join us. We would love to learn from you, to hear what your challenges are, where you've had successes, to shine a light on the amazing work that you're doing to prepare your students well for the future. I hope that the study and some of the things that we've raised here today are helpful, are inspiring to you, and would love to continue a conversation with you. So I will also look through some of the questions and make sure that we can answer those, but I just want to say let's work together. Let's figure out how we can best support students and help them be successful in a dynamic and changing world. Thank you.
Casey, thank you for the wonderful information. There are several questions that if we look back, I'm sure people would they would love to hear the answers for. One was, can you just go over the universities that you know that are taking video applications again, just to clarify the list?
Yeah, the two that I mentioned were Tufts University and Goucher College. Tufts is in Boston and Goucher is in Baltimore. I'm sure there are others. Those were the two that have really stood out as great examples. I think they've got some, if you even just do a YouTube search for those colleges, you'll see examples of what students have created in terms of how they're presenting themselves. So it'll give you some ideas of what high school students are communicating to colleges. I'm sure there are others. Those are the two that I've been following as part of this work.
And with the study on creativity, was there a general definition or consensus of creativity and what that meant for the study?
It's a really good question. So for the study, we did use a more specific definition of creativity where we were looking at bringing forward new ideas, and we identified innovation as making those ideas into practice, into bringing them into existence. I think sometimes when we talk about creativity, we are deliberately general and don't try to define it too closely. In part because I think Adobe sometimes has seen itself as focused only on creative professionals. And we really see that creativity is something that needs to be available to everyone and accessible to everyone. If you've looked at the kinds of things that Adobe's been releasing recently with our touch apps, many of those are really accessible and provide a great entry point that would help anyone express an idea, tell a compelling story. So I think when we talk about creativity, sometimes what we're talking about is creative thinking. It's the ability to explore new ideas. And I think it's important to keep that broad, although for the study we did try to define it so that it was clear to the folks who are answering and that they would have a sense of what questions they were actually responding to. If you look at the detailed study online, both the creativity study about business and then the study that we've created, they're both published and available. It'll give you a little bit more information about the kinds of definitions that we used.
Great. And as far as the slides from today's presentation, will those be publicly available later on?
This webinar is being recorded and will be publicly available, and we'll look at ways in which we can make the slides available. Most of the information is, certainly all of the study pieces are published broadly, and so those are currently available, and we'll work to make the rest of the slides available as well.
Well, we really appreciate you having you on the webinar today to share your information and just your insight on the world of work and creativity.
Absolutely, my pleasure, and I learn as much from you all. And so I'm lucky to have a job where I get to see amazing things that folks are doing all around the world.
So bringing everything full circle here, we're going to wrap up. For more information on the continuing webinars, and as well as other resources for building creativity in your classroom, you can join the edX and find resources there at edx.adobe.com. And if you haven't checked out the link that was put into the chat a couple times, Adobe has made a substantial donation to get software in the hands of students from across the country. So you can check out edx.adobe.com/connected and learn more there. And that wraps up for this evening, or this afternoon, or this morning, from wherever you are. Thank you, everybody.